Even with the social media landscape and algorithms constantly changing, there's one type of content that seems to always work well, and that's carousels. So today we're going to take carousels to the next level by creating an animated version that's perfect for showing off features, products, or in my case, some new templates. And we're going to do that using animations, frames, elements, and transitions, all easily done right inside Canva. I recently released some free animated social video templates for Canva, and I received a number of questions from people asking which template would be best for their business or for their purpose. So that's my intention in creating this carousel, to help communicate the features and uses of each individual template. But this same carousel style could be used to help your audience get super clear on which of your service packages is their perfect match, or which version of your product they should go for, or what specific features come with your product or your offer, or even what different speakers will be talking about on each day of your event. We're going to start with a blank social media design in Canva. I'm going to go with the Instagram post in the portrait format, which is the 4:5 ratio, or 1080 pixels wide by 1350 pixels high, because it occupies more space in the feed for us to use and showcase what we're trying to communicate. Of course, you could go with a vertical video format if that's more your style, but I specifically want this to look good right in my Instagram grid, not just as a reel. The first thing that I want to do is to add some guides in. So all I do is add a square graphic into my design here, and then I click and drag from the top to add some guides so that I know where my actual content will be cut off when it's previewed on the grid. Then I just select that rectangle or square and I delete it so that I can just see where my guides are. Now let's create our first slide for the carousel. I'm just going to go to my uploads and my images and scroll down and find an image that I uploaded previously, which has this kind of dark version of an image with previews of my templates, and I'm just going to stretch that so that it fills the background, and that's going to be a kind of neutral background image for my first slide. The next thing I'm going to do is to just add in a text box, and I'm going to add my first sentence or first words, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to format that using my brand fonts, and I'm going to resize it. And I'm essentially going to duplicate that multiple times so that I can create this stack of words but animate them individually and also resize them individually. The next thing I'm going to do is just change the copy in here. So this is going to say a closer look at your free, and then I want the last one which says templates. Now the reason that I've done it this way is so that it just gives me a bit more control in terms of resizing and respacing things. So I'm going to use the guide that appears when I click and drag this to the middle, and I'm just going to align all of these boxes, but I'm going to resize them. So each box will have a slightly different font size, and they will all be aligned left and right to create this kind of grid that's in the middle of the page. Now, once I've done that and I've resized them all, I can then just manually space them so that it looks like there is roughly the same amount of space between each line of text. And so this is going to be my first page, and it just says a closer look at your free templates. The next thing that I want to do is to indicate that this is a carousel and that there's more pages to look at. So I'm going to do that by going to Elements, and I'm going to choose Arrow, hit Enter. I'm going to go to Graphics, and then in the filters, I'm going to choose Animated. And I'm going to scroll down and look for an arrow that's in a circle that animates and points. I'm going to choose this white one, and I'm just going to resize it to a size that feels right, and I'm going to turn it so that it points right, and that's just so that it indicates that you're going to be scrolling with this carousel to the right. Now another thing that I want to do is I want to highlight the word free in this. So I'm going to again go to my graphics, and I'm going to choose Circle Pencil and hit Enter. Make sure I remove the animated element, and I am just going to scroll down till I find one that I think works for me. This one I can recolor. As you can see at the top here, it allows me to change it to my gold brand color, and I'm just going to resize it so that it's around the word free. But I'm going to use my position tool, go to layers, and move it behind all of the text. So it still highlights the word free, but it doesn't cross over the other text. Now I want to add in a couple of animations to this slide. So because it's a social media design, it doesn't show me a timeline at the bottom at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just click on this button in the bottom left that says duration, and it will bring up a timeline. I'm going to click on zoom to my thumbnails and zoom in a little so I've got a little more control. First thing I'm going to do is just select all of these text boxes, and I'm going to animate them, and I'm going to use the pan effect so that they come in just with this very subtle movement left to right. And actually what I'm going to then do is choose each alternate one and change the direction of the pan at the bottom here so that they come in slightly differently, but that it's just a very subtle, elegant change and there's not too much variation. Now the circle is already animated, but I'd quite like to animate this pencil. Now what I wanted to do was actually use one of the new animations that you got in Canva a little while ago with Droptober, but they don't appear here because I'm using an element, and they're only available to animate images and videos. So I'm going to cheat it. I'm going to add in a blank page, and I'm going to change the background just to solid black. I'm going to go back to that page and copy and paste the element that I want on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Share, then I'm going to go to See All, and Copy to Clipboard. I'm going to make sure it's only on page 2 that I want, and I'm going to say Copy to Clipboard. And what it does is copy this slide as an image. I'm going to delete that page, and I'm going to go back to my first page, and I'm just going to use Command or Control V to paste what I have just copied to the clipboard. If I just move that to the front of my layers, you can see it's just a plain black background with that graphic on. And I'm going to use Canva's nifty background remover tool to remove the black background. Now I can just trim it once that background is done so that I am closer to the edge of the actual graphic that I want to use. And then I'm going to delete the one that I put in before. Now I'm essentially working with an image rather than just a graphic. And while that doesn't make that much of a difference generally, what it does mean is when I go to animate, I have access to the new Canva animations. And I really like these brush and sketch animations for hand-drawn elements because it feels like it's hand-drawn. So I'm going to choose swipe, and you can see that that animates in. Now I'm just going to click on the 3 dots on that element, show element timing, and we're going to adjust that. So I only want this to come in once the text is all in, and it's going to animate around the word free, and that's it. Now I don't want this to be too long in general as a slide, so I'm just going to scroll back once I've trimmed it a little, hit play, and just see how long that takes. So that could be extended a little bit. We're going to take it out to about 4 seconds. And you'll see the text animates, then that circle highlights that they're free, and that's our first slide done. Now we're going to do our last slide. And for our last slide, I'm going to change the background to this kind of grayish color that I use, and then I'm going to go back to the first slide and just copy a couple of those text boxes so that I can use them on this page as well. I am going to change the font color on these to a darker color, and then I'm going to duplicate them. And on these, I'm just going to change the text to say, download your free templates now. Then I'm going to follow the exact same process I did before, where I'm going to resize the boxes so that they just create this kind of grid of text in the middle with varying sizes of text. The next thing I want to do on this final slide, I'm just again going to go to my uploads and scroll down because I know that I have a kind of piece of grid paper that I uploaded here. And this is something that I've used before, so I'm just going to use it again. And what I'm going to do is just resize this so that it fills most of the page, but not all of the page. The reason I'm doing that is because the rest of the carousel is going to look like it flows from one slide to the next. But this one, I wanted to show that this is the final slide. So I've got my text on top of that grid paper, and then what I want to do is add in the call to action. So I'm going to go back to my elements library and do a search for search bar. Find one that works for me in terms of the size and spacing, and then I'm going to recolor it so that it fits with my brand colors. And then I'm going to add another text box with the call to action or the domain where I want people to be able to find these templates. I'm going to go to my brand kit and just drop in a very subtle bit of branding so that that's also on that last page. And then I think the last thing I want to do is to just add a little bit of depth. So I'm going to go back to my elements library again, and I'm going to search for rectangle shadow. And I think I'm going to use just a kind of corner shadow. So this shadow makes it appear as if the corners of this piece of paper have been raised a little. I'm going to just resize it so that it fits mostly right. I'm going to take down the transparency a little, and then in the position tool, I'm going to make sure that it's behind that paper. And then what I'm going to do is just copy and paste it, rotate it 180 degrees, and then move it to the top and position it behind the paper again. So now you can see there is a really kind of subtle effect, feeling like that paper is lifting at the corners. Now the last thing that we're going to add to this page is something that's actually going to be essential, a line at the top that runs between all of the pages. Now because we haven't done the middle slides of this carousel yet, we don't know exactly where it needs to go, but I'm just going to position it here, and I'm going to take it down to 2 points, and now that is ready for me to just reposition once I know exactly where it goes. But now we have our first slide and our final slide done. Of course, if we want to add any other animations to the end of this, we can, but I'm just going to leave those text boxes animated as they were. Now we're going to go back to creating slide 2. Now slide 2 is essentially going to be the basis for all of our info slides, or the slides that actually contain our content as part of this carousel. So once we've created this, we're essentially going to refine it, edit it, animate it, because then we just duplicate that slide and change the content, because we've done everything else and done all the hard bits. And this is something I actually talk about inside my Canva OS course. If you follow this process and you have a kind of workflow that you can follow, it makes it so much easier, because you can create one of these slides just almost as a template for the rest of them. And that way you don't keep having to recreate and reinvent the wheel every time you create a slide. You don't have to do it from scratch. So let's pull together the elements for these slides, our info slides on the carousel. First thing I'm going to do is change the background to that gray color that I'm using, add a circle, resize that, and move it up to the corner of this slide. I'm going to add a border to that, change the border to white, and change the fill color to a lighter gray. And then I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut T to add a text box, and I'm going to add in the number 1. Then I'm going to position that in the center of the circle and change the color. So this is going to be the signposting, so people know which number carousel slide they're on and which template it's referring to. Now because my templates are social video templates, they're in the 16:9 or the vertical format, and so I'm going to use a mobile phone frame to put them in so that it reflects how they would be used. So I'm going to go to my elements section, and I'm going to type in mobile phone, and I'm just going to use this mobile phone frame. I'm going to put it on the left-hand side and enlarge it so that it crosses over that circle a little, just to add a bit of depth. And then speaking of depth, I'm also going to type in mobile phone shadow, and I'm going to bring in one of these shadows in roughly the right size, enlarge it, and then put it behind this frame or this element, so that we just have a little bit of depth to the phone. Now I mentioned before how that line on the last slide was going to be important, and that's why we're going to add one in here. So again, I'm going to take the line weight down to 2 points, and I'm going to align it with the center of that circle, and I'm going to then drag it to fit all the way across to the right edge of this post. Now, an easy way to make sure that it matches up with the last slide is just to copy this one, go back to the last slide, and paste that one in. Now you can see that I had it a little high, so I'm going to drag it off to the left, and I'm going to reposition my text boxes so that they fit a little better now with where that line comes into the page. And so even now you can see if I flick between the two, it creates this element of flow that moves from one to the other. It draws your eye along, and it's going to do that as we work through all of the slides in this carousel. Now back to our info carousel, I'm going to add in a rectangle, and I'm then going to space it so that it goes behind the phone. I'm going to add in rounded corners, and again I'm going to add in a little bit of a border, change that border to white, and change the fill to the lighter gray. And this is essentially going to provide the basis for where our actual information is going to go. I'm going to click and drag that behind the phone and the shadow, and now we've got a little box where we can put in our text. I'm going to put in a text box for the title, and that's just going to say features. Then I'm going to add in a text box again, and I'm going to put in the bullet points for this particular template, which is template number 1. Now this is where preparation is so important. Getting all your text content ready before you actually start creating makes so much difference because you can just copy and paste it into the design and you don't have to start writing as you're designing, which will slow up the whole process. So I'm just going to select that text, paste in my text, and then I'm going to change the alignment, change the font sizes, and essentially just play around with the formatting until it works for me in the space that we've got and gets all my information in there where I want it. Now I'm going to go back to my uploads folder, to the videos that I've uploaded, and these are videos which show how my templates work. So this is number 1, and I'm going to click and drag it into that frame. Now if I close that, you'll see that the template plays there so people can see what it is, and then we've got the features listed on the right hand side so people can understand whether this will work for them and what the features of this are. Now obviously if you're working with products or people or anything else, you could just use product photos rather than a frame with a video in it. Anything else that's relevant, but the idea is that you have an image or a video that showcases the product, and then a box that allows you to elaborate on the features of that offer or service or product. The next thing we want to do here is to add a little bit of animation. So again, I'm going to go to the bottom left and click on duration, and that brings up my timeline. Now I don't need the whole template video to play, even though it is allowing for that. So I'm going to click and drag from the end of that, and I'm going to take it down to about 22.5 seconds. That gives you a bit of time to see how the animations work on the template, but it's not too long. Now the phone and the shadow behind the phone, I want to animate together, and I'm going to click on animate and say blur, and those are going to come in at the same time. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots, show element timing, and I want them to come in once the changes actually happen from one slide to the next. So that's our intro slide, then we go to this slide, and then those will animate in. And then once they've animated in, that's when I want the box with the features to animate in. I'm going to click on that one, and I'm going to click on animate. And what I'm probably going to do is have that come from baseline from the left to right, so it looks as if it emerges from behind the phone. So the phone comes in, and then the box will animate. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got that selected for timing, and then click and drag it along so that it only appears once that video has started to play. So the phone in shadow comes in, and then a box emerges from behind them. And then at about 6.3 seconds is where I wanted the text to start coming in. So I'm going to click on my features box, and I'm going to drag the left hand side so that it only comes in once the background box has fully animated. Same thing goes for the other text box. I'm just going to click and drag that and make sure that it only appears once the features box has appeared in. And then I'm going to click on both of those text boxes, and I'm going to choose a typewriter animation for those. And now if I just go to the beginning and hit play, you'll see the phone comes in, the box emerges, the heading, and then the text. I think that text is going to take too long, so I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go to typewriter, and I'm going to change the speed and just play around with that until it works for me. One thing that's worth noting is I want all these animations to only happen at the beginning of the slide. I don't want them to disappear at the end of the slide. So I'm going to click on each element and make sure that on the left-hand side, it only animates on enter. It doesn't animate on both. And now if I play through this whole slide, you'll see those animations happen. The video is playing within that frame, and then we get to see a bit of what the template actually involves so that they can tell how it could be used for them. And that's essentially our info slides created. Now to create the subsequent slides, however many you need, we are literally just going to duplicate this whole slide with all those elements, because then we can just click and drag or copy and paste the new content into each of those. So we click on the slide itself. At the bottom here in the timeline, I'm going to use Control-C to copy it, but you could also use the 3 dots here and choose Duplicate Page, and it creates a second version. It just goes along to the end of the first one, and then the second slide begins. And now on slide 2, I am going to zoom out and allow a little bit more space on the bottom of the timeline, and I'm going to go start filling in the information and the video for the second template. Don't forget to change the number of the slide at the top, and we're going to continue that pasting in our feature text and putting in our new videos until we have all 6 slides. Now, once all the content's in, the last thing we want to do is to just check the timings. Some of those template videos are a little longer than the others, so as you click and drag them in, they will extend the duration of that particular page. So I'm just going to go back in and make sure I refine those so that each template showcase slide or page is roughly the same duration, so that it just feels natural and doesn't spend too long on one of the templates as opposed to the others. Once we've done that, to get a good idea of how this will flow when it's actually in Instagram and works as a carousel, I'm going to go to the first slide, and between that and the second slide, I am just going to add a transition in. And I'm going to choose the slide transition so you can see how it creates the effect of sliding a carousel to the left. And at the bottom, I'm going to click Apply Between All Pages. Now, if I play through, you can see how this works as a carousel. The frame or the placeholder comes in with the video, then we've got the features listed here in bullet points, and then at the end of the slide, it moves and slides along to essentially the second page in a carousel. For the second, third, and subsequent slides, what I also want to do is make sure that this line extends to the edge on the left as well, so I can position it behind that circle, and that way we get the flow between one slide and the next. So you can see that that line adds the sense of continuity as it moves to the next slide or the next page in this carousel. And I'm going to make sure I do that for all of those subsequent pages to make sure that we still have that effect. Now, before we get to the options that you have when exporting this and how you can use it in different ways on your feed or for your social media, if you are interested in actually getting access to these templates that we've just talked about, if you go to the link that's on the screen right now, you can download them all for free. You could pick just the ones you want or download all of them, whichever is useful for you. Plus, to make it easy for you to customize these to work for your brand, I also created a mini course that goes along with these templates, and you'll get free access to that as well when you download these templates. There are 3 different ways that we can use this or export it to use this for social media. Now, because you can use video on, for example, Instagram's feed, you could export this as one whole long video and just upload that to your grid, and it will also be shown as a reel. So basically, you're just exporting one video with all of these in, and you do that just by going to Share, and you go to Download, and Export to an MP4 video, including all of these pages. So that's as easy as it is. The other thing you could do is you could export each of these pages as an individual short video, and then you could upload those as an Instagram carousel. And instead of having carousels that are made up of, in this case, 8 static images, it would be a carousel that's made up of 8 short videos. And your last option is that you could, for example, just export the first page as a video so that you've got the animation in there and the little animated circle, and the rest of them you could export as images. And you do that in exactly the same way. You just go to Share, Download, and instead of a video type, you could go to JPEG or PNG, and you could export all of those and just choose which pages to export as stills. And that way you have a lot of flexibility of how you can use this that works for your chosen platform. Now, if I shorten each of those slides, just for the sake of this video, we can have a look at how this carousel works just as one long video. And that's it for today, folks. As I mentioned, if you want to get access to those templates, please just head to the link on the screen right now or in the description below the video, and you can download those and get access to the free course that goes along with them. Otherwise, thank you for being here, have a fabulous week, and I will see you next time.